Hollywood was buzzing, all eyes on the 25th BET Awards. Everyone expected the usual glitz, the glamour, the perfectly choreographed moments. But what absolutely nobody saw coming was Tyler Perry, the industry's quiet giant, the longtime confidant of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, stepping to the mic. His words weren't a shout, but a whisper that echoed like a thunderclap, ripping apart Meghan's carefully crafted image. What happened that night changed everything. Cast your mind back to 2020. Harry and Meghan had just jettisoned their royal roles, landing in a new world with no clear path. And who stepped into that void? Tyler Perry. He wasn't just offering a helping hand, he was throwing them a lifeline. The keys to his $18 million Beverly Hills estate, security details, bills covered. A true sanctuary in their hour of need. It looked from the outside like a selfless act of friendship, a man understanding the brutal glare of public life. But the truth, as it often does, hides in the shadows. That seemingly generous act we now know slowly morphed into something far more one-sided. Sources close to Perry reveal a quiet depletion, both emotional and financial. He had been biting his tongue for years, but a breaking point was coming. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect, or the profound lack thereof. And that's what made his BET Award speech so utterly shocking. Perry stood on that stage, a beacon of measured success, and dropped a story so pointed he didn't even need to name names. He spoke of offering his home, his help, his very heart, only to be ghosted the moment his generosity had served its purpose. Some folks borrow blessings like they're owed, but never return the favor, he said. The cameras didn't pan, but if you knew the history, you felt the accusation pierce the air. A simple request, she called it, access to his private jet. No discussion of logistics, no mention of cost. When Perry, feeling used, politely declined, the alleged backlash from Meghan was immediate and sharp. That moment, insiders claim, was the true turning point. What began as a genuine favor between friends had, according to those around Perry, curdled into a pattern of breathtaking entitlement. He wasn't alone in feeling this way. Staffers, colleagues, even producers had privately warned him, Meghan doesn't repay favors. She accumulates them like social currency, then cuts people off when they stop serving her narrative. Perry, ever the optimist, initially dismissed these whispers. He believed in helping those in need. But as the Netflix and Spotify millions rolled in, as the gratitude remained deafeningly silent, the stark reality became undeniable. There was no plan for reciprocity. When Tyler Perry took that stage, he wasn't just sharing a story, he was making a statement. Even the most generous among us have a breaking point. And when they reach it, silence is no longer an option. Meghan had meticulously built her brand on being a misunderstood woman, silenced by the crown. But Perry wasn't the crown, he was the man who opened his doors, no strings attached, and now he was calling her out. Just like that, the fairy tale shimmered and cracked. The savior had become the whistleblower. Hollywood's nicest guy had finally declared, enough is enough. The timing couldn't have been more devastating. Meghan and Harry were just beginning to pitch a new documentary project, touting themes of power and freedom. But after Perry's speech, investors started backing out. Trust, once a given, evaporated. The illusion was shattered. And Meghan's last true, powerful ally had just walked away. Hollywood, a place built on unspoken rules and reciprocal back-scratching, rarely takes sides publicly, but Tyler Perry isn't just anyone. He's a studio-owning powerhouse, revered for his empire and his quiet, classy demeanor. So when he throws shade, especially at someone he once protected, the ripple effect is immense. Phone calls began the very next morning. Producers attached to the Sussex's latest Netflix pitch reportedly withdrew support within hours. An investor, having sat through multiple planning meetings, stated bluntly, "I don't want to be involved in something that feels this toxic." This wasn't about the content, it was about the people behind it. Meghan's name, once a draw, was now a red flag. The question, of course, lingered. Where did Harry stand amidst this unfolding drama? His silence, in the wake of Perry's bombshell, became almost as deafening as the accusations themselves. Some close to the couple whispered of a man caught in an impossible bind, trying desperately to salvage what remained of their public image, without further antagonizing a powerful Hollywood ally or openly contradicting his wife. Others painted a bleaker picture, a prince exhausted, burned out from years of relentless media battles, the brutal fallout with his own family, and now watching their carefully constructed inner circle utterly collapse. Was he strategizing or simply retreating into the quiet despair of a man who saw his dreams slipping away? What happens next and how he chooses to react could very well dictate the final chapter of their American experiment. Back at Archewell, Meghan's PR machine went into overdrive. They reached out to major media outlets, scrambling to reframe the narrative. Perry was bitter, out of touch, simply misunderstanding Meghan's pure intentions. They offered exclusives, behind-the-scenes access, even hinted at a podcast rebuttal. But none of it stuck. Journalists didn't bite. If anything, the desperation made things worse. It reeked of a cover-up. Behind the scenes, the mess only deepened. Friends close to Perry revealed he hadn't wanted to go public, but felt cornered after years of alleged emotional manipulation. The final straw wasn't the private jet, nor a vague business proposal. It was the chilling realization that Meghan was not just ungrateful, she was actively weaponizing their friendship to gain influence. One source familiar with Perry's team recounted how Meghan had allegedly tried to leverage his name in early 2024 to access a funding circle, suggesting he was a silent backer without his permission. Perry was livid. It was then he chose to speak out, not for gossip, but to protect his reputation from being co-opted. Then, other voices joined the chorus. A former assistant from Meghan's team described the work environment as emotionally exhausting, claiming Meghan demanded absolute loyalty and punished dissent. A producer who worked on the now-defunct Spotify deal said Meghan's obsession with perfection stifled every good idea. They said she didn't want partners, they said. She wanted yes men. Even Oprah's inner circle, once thought to be tight with Meghan, began to quietly distance themselves. Sources confirmed no friendly calls between the camps for months. When Perry's speech detonated, Oprah's team remained utterly silent. No defense, no solidarity, just space. The dominoes were falling. Meghan had meticulously positioned herself as a symbol of female empowerment and independence. But now, that image was being torn apart by the very people who had once supported her. To many, it felt like a mask had been lifted. These weren't tabloid rumors. These were stories from individuals who had worked with her, helped her, and in Perry's case, literally housed her. As the days passed, what began as one man's bold words spiraled into a cultural shift. Meghan Markle was no longer untouchable. The backlash wasn't just reputational, it began hitting her bank accounts. Netflix reportedly reevaluated its long-term commitment. Other investors pulled out. Archewell's future looked increasingly shaky. Internal projects were paused, hires frozen, budgets scrutinized weekly, public trust was unraveling. The underdog who took on the monarchy, the voice of empowerment, these narratives were now dissected and doubted in real time. Even longtime fans fell silent. Media outlets once eager to publish glowing features were now holding back. Nobody wanted to risk aligning with a brand in freefall. The internal strife at Archewell became a whispered saga. Reports emerged of a revolving door of staff, each departure fueling more speculation about the demanding atmosphere. It wasn't just a challenge to keep projects afloat, it was a struggle to maintain any semblance of stability. For a brand built on relatability and authenticity, the mounting claims of a difficult workplace proved a brutal blow. The very foundation of her public image seemed to be crumbling from within. Meghan's carefully curated narrative, once her greatest asset, was now her biggest vulnerability. Every past statement, every carefully posed photo, was re-examined through the lens of Perry's unexpected accusation. The narrative of the misunderstood victim began to fray, replaced by questions about accountability. The public, often quick to embrace a compelling story, was now just as quick to dissect it when the cracks appeared. This wasn't merely a PR crisis, it was an identity crisis playing out in real time. The silence from the Sussex camp, particularly from Harry, became increasingly conspicuous. While Meghan reportedly raged behind closed doors, his public demeanor remained muted, a stark contrast to their usual united front. Was it a strategic withdrawal, an attempt to weather the storm, or something more profound? The questions only added fuel to the fire, as even their most ardent supporters began to voice concern over the persistent rumors and the lack of a clear, convincing counter-narrative. The impact reverberated beyond Hollywood's elite circles. Sponsorships that had once seemed guaranteed for Archewell projects began to quietly disappear. Collaborations that were in their infancy suddenly went dark. The once bright future of their media empire, poised for global expansion, now faced significant hurdles. This was more than just a setback. It was a fundamental challenge to their perceived influence and marketability. The once invincible shield of public sympathy that Meghan had skillfully wielded had shattered. The cultural conversation shifted dramatically. What was once seen as a noble escape from royal confines was now being reevaluated as a calculated move with a history of alleged exploitation. The public's perception, fickle as it can be, had decisively turned, and reclaiming that lost trust would prove to be an uphill battle, perhaps an impossible one. Behind closed doors, insiders claim Meghan fired furious texts at Perry after the BET speech, accusing him of betrayal, humiliation, and damaging her family's legacy. But Perry didn't reply. Not then, not ever. His silence spoke volumes. Friends of the Hollywood mogul confirmed he had been emotionally cornered for years, pressured to give more, say less, and stay loyal to someone who viewed loyalty as pure currency. Other voices echoed this. A respected publicist claimed Meghan's team tried to blacklist journalists for unscripted questions. A former Archewell consultant revealed Meghan often ignored strategic advice if it didn't reinforce her personal narrative. The stories were damning not for their drama, but for their consistent pattern: control, manipulation, and emotional leverage. Even major Hollywood names, once neutral, began to speak with caution. Studio executives whispered about the challenges of working with her team, joking it was like playing chess with a mirror. Nothing ever reflected truthfully. Everything was spin. And then came the numbers. Recent polls showed support for the Sussexes plummeting by over 30% in the US, while in the UK, they were already largely viewed as pariahs. Their once rising empire was now a warning sign. Through it all, Harry remained mostly silent. Some say he's trying to salvage what's left. Others believe he's simply exhausted, burned out from years of media battles, family fallout, and now watching their inner circle collapse. Tyler Perry's speech wasn't loud or angry. It didn't need to be. It was honest, quiet, surgical. And that's what made it lethal. It didn't just expose one moment, it exposed a pattern. And in a town where reputation is everything, Meghan Markle just learned that even royalty can be exiled twice. Once from the crown, and now from the culture itself.